What's up guys, and welcome to another Sm.I.E video. So this video is actually the third video in this virtualization series that I'm doing, and in this video we're gonna look at, we're gonna pick up from where we left off in the second video, which was at step 6, and that was to deploy the virtual machines or virtual servers, right? Now, not to worry, if you missed the first 2 videos, then I'll leave a link in the description so you can go ahead and check those videos out before you continue with this one. But if you're ready, let's go.
All right, so we're gonna start off this video by reminding you guys of the steps that we had listed before in the second video, right? So there's 7 steps. We've pretty much gone through steps 1 to step 5 already. And we're now at step 6 and step 7. Actually, yeah, step 6 and step 7, right? So we've already configured the ESXi server on that server that we rolled out. Now we need to go in and just configure the storage, whether it be external or internal storage, and then start creating the virtual machines. Just test them to show you. So let's get to that. All right, so as a part of the last 2 steps that we're going to do, step 6 and 7, I just want to refresh you guys' memory of the topology that we're going to be using, right? So we have our gateway router or our edge router here. That's at 192.168.100.4, and we have our physical server. That's the server that we have virtualized and turned it into a hypervisor host, which is at 10.0.0.20. And now we're going to deploy these 3 servers here. We're going to deploy a DNS / domain controller server, and then we're going to deploy a web server, and then we're going to deploy a database server. We're not actually going to configure the database and the website to these servers. We're just going to deploy them and give them their IP addresses so that they're reachable on the net. What we will do is we will configure the DNS on the DNS server, and what we're going to do is we're going to do some ping tests so that you can actually see that when you ping, let's say we ping from either one of these servers, you'll be able to ping these servers by their domain names. So we can show you that the networking and the connectivity is working, so that you know that this is something that will work in your environment for you. Okay, all right, so let's get to it. Okay, so first thing that we're going to do here is we're going to log into our vSphere client, and we're going to configure the storage on this, right? So remember, I said we can configure local storage, as in storage on hard drives that are installed in the server, or we can configure access to some external storage. So we're going to do both. I do have an external storage here. It's a little QNAP system that I'm using that does have some data stores and everything already configured. So once I configure access to that storage, you're going to see the data stores that I have already named up, right? But let's start by configuring the storage on the local server itself. Remember, there are 2 hard drives here, one with 20 gigs and one with 160 gigs, right? So let's get to that. First, we're going to go over to storage, and notice there's nothing here. So we're going to go to new data store, and we're going to click create a new VMS data store. I'm going to start to show you the available hard drives that are there, right? So it shows you the 160 gigabyte hard drive. Now, this is the thing with version 7 that I've noticed for ESXi. For the management drives, the management hard drives, or the drives that have the OS installed, it does not show those when you do a scan anymore, just off the bat as available drives, right? So it shows the drives that are available that does not have them. So this drive is here. I'm gonna call this, let's call it prod 1 data store, right? So that's the name that I'm gonna give this data store. Now, data store is basically like a storage resource where you can create hard drives for virtual machines, right? And the files for those are gonna be installed here. Basically, once I click next, it's telling me that it's going to use all of that partition, the whole 160 gigabytes, to create a data store. Next again, click finish, and it says the entire contents of this disk are going to be replaced. I'm sure, yeah, go ahead. Boom. So here we go. Now we have our first data store, our first storage system attached. This ESXi host, or this server, right? All right. The next thing that we want to do is we want to actually add the external storage that I have, and we're going to do that using iSCSI, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use software iSCSI. I'm going to click it. It's disabled, so I'm going to click enabled. Once I click enabled, then it's going to load. So I'm going to just wait for it to load here. All right. Once it loads, there's nothing that I'm going to change here. The only thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to add a dynamic target. And this dynamic target is going to be the IP address of my QNAP server, right? There are lots of videos out there on how to configure this kind of stuff. So I'm not going to go through this today. I'm just going to go ahead and add it. I'm going to leave the port as default. Save that configuration. All right, and once it's added, still adding down here. Once it's added, then I'm gonna rescan and see if it picks up the data stores that are attached. Normally, people would separate their storage network and their management network, but as you can see on this, I just have the management network, and I'm gonna create a network for the VMs and tag it with a VLAN. But for the time being, all I have on this is just the management network, and I don't have a storage network as I'm not separating it. I'm not going to show you guys that today, but that's also something that you can do, and it is best practice to separate your storage, right? All right, so let's head over to the storage, and let me do a rescan just to see if it's going to pick up everything, just to make sure, right? Just want to rescan just to make sure everything. So I come over to the data stores now because I added the iSCSI drive and I did the rescan. So here you go. All of these are data stores that I have created on my external storage, right? So you can see all of the space that's attached to these that I have created. All right, cool. So now we have our storage configured. So the next thing that we're going to do is to deploy the VMs. All right. So in order to deploy these VMs, I'm going to first need to create the network that the VMs are going to be connected to, that they're going to be using, right? To do that in VMware ESXi, what you do is you create what's called a port. Port group is basically what passes the network that you have your services connecting to, or your virtual machines connecting to, into ESXi, and connects you back to the physical network, right? So I'm going to create a port group, and it's very simple. It's very simple. Call this VM port group. I spell group, yeah. VM port. VLAN that I'm going to use for this is VLAN 100. It's going to remain on vSwitch 0. I'm not going to create a new switch for it. I am going to accept these so that I am able to connect the nested virtual machines to this, and I'll just click add here. One thing that I need to also do here on the switch, virtual switch, I need to also change that security. Because I'm nesting, I'm gonna need to make sure that the security is set to accept all of this stuff so that it will work as it should, right? Okay, cool. So I have now done that. The next thing that I'm going to do now is I'm going to start to deploy the virtual machine. So first things first, let's start with the DNS machine. This virtual machine that we're going to deploy is the DNS server, right? This is going to be a Windows machine, and it's going to be, let's say, Windows Server 3. Now, this, where you say compatibility, this basically says what type of virtual machine are you deploying? Are you deploying something that's compatible to ESXi 7, or are you deploying it that's compatible to an earlier version of ESXi, or whatever the case may be? I'm using ESXi 7 right now as the demo, so I'm going to leave it at ESXi 7. I'm going to choose one of the storage platforms that I'm going to deploy this VM on. Let's choose Prod 1. That's the one that we created from before. Right. Just click next. Then I'm going to now go through and set all these settings. So I'm going to leave it at 2 CPUs and 2 cores per socket, essentially enabling 4 cores. I'm going to enable CPU hot add, which basically allows me to add more CPU if necessary to this without having to power the VM off. And I'm going to expose hardware assisted virtualization to the VM. I'm also going to expose the IO MMU to the guest OS. So all of those basically just allow me to have this VM function like how I need it to. You don't necessarily have to do this in your physical environment. At least not the IO MMU and the hardware assisted virtualization. You might not necessarily need to do that, but it's also good practice to do that so your VMs function without any issues, right? If you don't fully understand what's happening. Now I'm going to set the amount of memory that I'm giving this. I'm going to give it 8 gigs, and I'm going to go ahead and enable hot swap for the memory as well, which is basically the same thing as the CPU, so that I can add more memory if necessary, and I don't power this off. The hard disk space, I'm going to give this 40 gigs of hard disk space, and I'm going to thin provision it. Thin provisioning basically means that I am not reserving the entire 40 gigs. I am going to make a note in the system that I want 40 gigs, but I will use as much as I need until I get. That's pretty much what it is, right? So it's not reserving the entire amount, but it's making a note that I want that amount. Next thing I'm going to do is now connect it to the network. Didn't I create that network? Okay. I'm going to go back and do that. I think maybe I didn't create it because I'm not seeing it here, but I'm going to go back and do that later on. So let's now add the ISO image for the Windows that I'm going to install. So like that. And let me click next. And I'm going to click finished. Yes, DNS server. There we go. So it's there. But let me go back and check the networking. I'm pretty sure I created a port group, right? Yeah, here it is. VM port group. So I should be seeing this on this server. I should be seeing the option to add that port group here. There we go. VM port group. Why it wasn't coming. Let's save this and let's power on this virtual machine. Alright. Press any key to boot from CD. There we go. I did. Alright, so this should boot up in Windows. I may have pressed that multiple times. Alright, so we're booting up into the Windows installation. And this should now go ahead and install Windows Server 2016 as is customary. This might take a little while to boot to the initial install screen. So I'm going to give it some time, and I may just skip through this part until we get to the initial install screen, and then I'll take you guys from there. Okay, so we're at the install screen. We're going to go through now and install the virtual machine, configure the virtual machine. I'm going to try and run through this pretty quickly. And of course, I'm going to skip through the parts that are going to take some time while the configuration is being done and the install is being done, okay? All right, so I'm going to install version with the desktop experience because I want to be able to use the desktop in this. All right, accept the license. Next, install Windows only, click next, and this is going through the install process. All right, so I'm going to let this run. I'm going to skip through this and move on to the next stage of this once this is installed. All right, boom. So now we're at well, now Windows has finished installing, and we're going to go through and enter a password for this so that we can log in. And enter a password here. That's it. So enter a password, and there you go. It's just like installing regular Windows on a regular server. It's the same thing. Operates just like regular Windows, everything. So we're gonna need to log in with Control-Alt-Delete. Now, if you press Control-Alt-Delete on your keyboard, you might restart your computer. So basically what you do is you come up here to the right where there's an action button, and you go to Guest OS, and you see where it says Send Keys, and you just select Control-Alt-Delete, and then you can enter the password to log into that VM, right? And there we go. We are in with the Flynn. All right, cool. So we've now deployed the first VM. This is going to be our DNS server. So we need to set up DNS and the domain controller on this just for testing purposes. I'm not going to run through that with you guys. I'll do that after in a little quick break. And then I'll just go through and set up the other two servers. How we deploy the other two servers is pretty much the same as how we've deployed this, right? It's going to be the same thing. So I'm going to just come here and give this server an IP address. If you remember the IP we set on the diagram that I showed you before, we're going to set the IP address here. Let's see if we can find that diagram. Right, here we go. So there's the DNS server. So it's going to be 100.10, 100.11, 100.12. So I'm going to deploy these other two servers, but I'm going to set the IP address for this and configure DNS. And I'm sorry, guys, but just in the interest of time, as that's not what I'm demoing in this video, I'm just going to configure it off screen. All right. So, but one thing that I will do here is just to add the IP address so that this is reachable. Oops, 192.168.100.10. That was the IP. 92.168.100.1. So there's a small change from the diagram. I was using 100.4, but I'm going to use 100.1 instead, which is a different router interface that I have as my gateway. And I'm going to put in 168. Oops. This is going to be its own. It's going to be its own DNS server, right? So 127.0.0.1, which is basically pointing it to itself. And I'm going to just add Google as a backup here. All right, click OK. Add that. And yep, there we go. It's on the network. So it's discoverable. Close that. I should be able to ping my gateway. Let me just make sure that that's possible. And let's do a ping test ping. What am I? 192.168.100.1, which is the gateway. Boom, reachable. All right, cool. So we're good to go on this. So I'm gonna just deploy the other two VMs and as well deploy the DNS and the domain control on this server, and I'm going to configure the networking for the other two VMs as well, just the same as I did just now. And then I am going to pick up from there once those are all done, and just to test and show you. But that's how simple it is to deploy a VM. So I've deployed ESXi. This is the network that we're this is the vSphere client that we're in right now. The first VM is deployed. I can come here to virtual machines, and when I come to virtual machines, I'll see the VMs that are here. And when I deploy the other two virtual machines, this is where I'm going to start off from. You're going to see the other two virtual servers here, and they're going to be on the same host. So that's 3 servers technically on the same host utilizing the resources. And then I'm going to show you, I'm going to just do some testing and show you that it is actually working as it should. All right, let's do that, and then I'll pick up from where I left off there. All right, so all the servers have now been deployed. DNS has been deployed in the environment on the DNS server. Web server and the DB server, they don't have any configuration on them outside of their IP address configuration so that they're reachable over the network. Yep, and everything is up and running now, and I can click on any one of the servers from here and access them directly from within the vSphere client, and I can do configurations from on the server. I can check stuff. I can do whatever I need to do from on the server from within the console on the vSphere client, right? Now, what I want to do is show you though that even though this is deployed within vSphere as a virtual machine, I have access to it over the network. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just do an IP config here. This is IP, an IP config, sorry. Open a command prompt, and then I'm going to do an IP config just to verify the IP address. That's 192.168.100.10, right? So I'm going to do a ping test from my laptop. This is my laptop interface, 192.168.100.10. Boom, reachable. The other IPs as well, 11, reachable. 12 should also be reachable. Yeah, so I can reach all of them. So 10, 11, 12 were configured, and they're all reachable, right, from my laptop, which is, if I do an IP config, you can see I'm not on that network. I'm on a different network. This is my IP address right here on my Wi-Fi, 192.168.168.103. So I'm not on that network, but I'm still able to reach it, right? And I can also show you, I can remote desktop into these machines. I can use RDP and connect to these machines. If I do 192.168.100.10, yep, there we go. And it's gonna log me out once I log in, right? It's gonna log me out. Oh, did the wrong path. Let's do this right. Logged in. There we go. So same screen that you were looking at. If you notice, it logged me out. So I'm no longer in on this on the console because I logged in as the same user from somewhere else. It logged me out, right? And I just want to show you this as well. Just another quick test for you. I'm going to show you on the DNS server, right? So let's go to Server Manager and just open the DNS configuration from here. And I just want to show you. So the name of the domain that I configured is lab.test, right? And here the IP address is for the hosts, the other two servers, the web server and DB server, right? All right, cool. So if I come and do a ping test here from my laptop, oh wait, let me first change my DNS on my laptop to the IP address of that DNS server that I just built out, right? So this is gonna be 100.10. Change my DNS. All right, cool. So now if I do a ping test here, I should be able to ping that IP using the URL for it. So ping, what is it? Let's go web server.lab.test. Boom, look at that. I'm resolving via that DNS server, the one that's built out in ESXi. That is awesome, right? I can do the same for the other server, which that was DB server. Let's see, DB server. Boom. And you can see the response came back from the IP address, right? 100.12, 100.11. Yep. So that is how easy, not necessarily simple, but that's how easy it can be to get started with virtualization and configuring a virtual environment so that you can conserve on some money, you can conserve on some space, and you can optimize your network and have better management of your network, right? Virtualization is a really powerful tool. And hopefully by now you can see how beneficial it is to operate within that kind of environment. I hope you guys enjoyed what I showed you so far. But yep, that's it.
All right, and that's it. So over the last 3 videos, I explained to you guys what virtualization is, and I showed you how this technology can make a big difference in an organization. thereby also making a big difference with services that we consume as consumers, right? And then I showed you how easy it is to set up something like this within your own organization using VMware ESXi. Now, there's another layer to this that I want to touch on, and that is centralized management. VMware accomplishes this with a tool they call vCenter. This tool offers a number of benefits outside of just centralized management. There are a number of benefits that come along with using vCenter in your environment as well. Now, what do I mean by centralized management? Well, I showed you that you can virtualize a server using ESXi, but suppose you have several servers that you virtualize. How are you going to manage these servers? Well, in order to manage these servers, you're going to have to log into each of these individual servers' management portal, their vSphere portal. What vCenter does is vCenter allows you one single pane of glass for management for all of these servers, and you can go in and make configurations and do whatever it is that you need to do from vCenter, managing multiple servers all at once instead of having to log into everything individually. In our next video, we're going to get into this and we're going to talk about how it works and why it's beneficial. And I'm going to also show you how you can set this up. But for now, that's it. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video today, and if you did, please feel free to give me a thumbs up and drop me a comment, right? And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to my channel for more content. My name is Nate. I'll catch you guys on the next one.